Hello, my name is Bill Tilton. This documentary is a large portion of my 85 years of life. We cover from the farm in south central Oklahoma, little town of Narrations, through my military service, on into my work years and retirement. Consolidated Freightways has been a large portion of my life. Without Consolidated, I would not have been able to do the things I've been blessed with. This is Bob Hamilton, my very best friend, who had a stroke years ago and passed away, and it was really a devastating part of my life. When life really started, I was 14 years old, and Bob and I decided we were going to be the rodeo champions of the world. So we quit school and found out we wasn't worth a darn rodeoing. Wound up working for $100 a month in room and board out on a ranch in Guymon, Oklahoma. Then the draft registration caught up with Bob, so we left there, and Bob decided he was going to go back to Oklahoma City and join the Navy. Well, I was kind of devastated. I didn't know what on earth to do. To make a long story short, at 15, we decided that I was going to go with him, and I had my birth certificate altered. I won't go into any more of that. And then on the 1st of June of 1951, we departed Oklahoma City for San Diego for Navy boot camp. And as we progressed through there, we were supposed to be buddies while we were in service, enlistment buddies. Well, that didn't work out. Bob wound up on the Cavalier, and I wound up on the aircraft carrier Essex. Late 1951, October to be exact, I was on the Essex, and that's when I celebrated my 16th birthday off the coast of Korea. But that's Bob and I in boot camp in San Diego in 1951 with a few other of our mates, Bob and I and the girls we were dating at the time. Now we're going to talk about something that I love very, very much, and that's Consolidated Freightways. Leland James was the founder. Leland was born in 1892 and passed away in 1964. I regret it very much that I never had the opportunity to meet him. He was the founder and president of Consolidated Freightways, and he founded it in 1929, and he was president from 1929 to 1955. During that period, he was also American Trucking Association president from 1950 to 1951. The old trucks with the sheep and so forth, those were the original Consolidated Freightways trucks. And back in those days, instead of running semis all the time, they run what we called a truck and trailer. The truck was a very uneconomical freight moving tool because you had the power unit tied up while you was loading and unloading it. So that's why the semi became the way to load and unload. And then as the years went on, we went to the double trailers, which really, really helped out in the movement of freight. You could pure a trailer in Chicago for Seattle and pure one for Minneapolis. Run those two together to Minneapolis, drop the Minneapolis one, and pick up another one on for the West Coast. As years went on in the West, we came up with the triple trailer, and that was pretty well west of Denver. Then in 1966, we got the doubles or the triples on the turnpike in Kansas. CF would run Wichita, Kansas freight with triples, and if they didn't have a triple for Wichita, they could drop at the turnpike entrance a trailer for Topeka or Lawrence. Well, in the late 1900s, the employees of Consolidated Freightways bought 2 trailers and 1 conventional Freightliner and gave it to the company. And these 2 trailers had to stay together. And this was quite a tribute that the employees did. And those are actual CF employees' pictures on the side of that trailer. This is the stack of 3 new Freightliners coming out of the Portland plant. And I don't know if I've mentioned earlier, but Leland James designed the Freightliner. Freightliner at first was only a Consolidated Freightways vehicle. Then he entered into an agreement with White Motor Company, and CF continued to build the Freightliner, but White Motor Company was a distributor for it. And as the years passed on there, they closed that agreement and went back to Consolidated Freightways owning and distributing the Freightliner. And as later years went on, then Freightliner was sold to Mercedes-Benz. All right, for years, we did not shut down for Christmas. Then in 1988, this is the Christmas shutdown and startup in Atlanta at the Ellenwood Consolidation Center. And it indicates how many pure sets we had set and the total number of shipments and the total tonnage. And then as we move on, we show a set of triples that are downtown Dallas. And I might add that this picture was taken illegally. You could not pull triples in downtown Dallas. But one of the dock hands and a few of us took it downtown one night and shot it. Down at the bottom is when I was manager of the safety supervisors. That's Bert Stute, who I was given an award to. As we move on down, it just shows a semi of, we put flags on the back of all of our equipment one year, and the manufacturer of the flag did an excellent job, because as it went down the road and you got some vibration out of the door, it appeared that the flag was flying. When we was hiring in Kansas City, a gentleman came in to be interviewed. His name was John Davis, and later I found out in my interviews and such with him, he was one of the original Tuskegee Airmen. Well, John became a transport operator for us, and then we promoted him into dispatch, and then we promoted him into dispatch manager, and then I took him on my staff when I was manager of line haul travel training, and John traveled with me with the rest of the staff. After he retired, President Bush took all the existing Tuskegee Airmen to Washington and presented them with a plaque at the White House. And shortly after that, when John returned back to Kansas City, he passed away. And here on the table, we've got a Consolidated Freightways 50 yearbook from 1929-1979. We've got the life of Leland James. And then I've been a real advocate of the Wheels of Time, which is a historical trucking association based in Kansas City. As we move on later, I'll show you various books that I get monthly from the Historical Society. I know if there's some truckers watching this, there's thousands of them that belong and enjoy wheels of time like I do. I also carried this rule number 1. If you don't take care of the customer, somebody else will. The semi there that says Consolidated Freightways ex-con reunion, a group of CF drivers and employees got together out of the Kansas City terminal. They held and are still holding it today in September, a reunion of ex-CF people. We call them the ex-cons. That particular truck and trailer was a door prize at one of the reunions, and I happened to have won it. Then the next rack of books, on one rack, it shows CF freighters. And if you were a CF employee, you received one of these at your home every other month. I have copies back to 1966. And then the other rack, it has some of the freighters, and the others are the Wheels of Times books, which comes from the Historical Association, as I mentioned earlier, in Kansas City. Some pictures in between those books are pictures of the CF labor men at a company meeting in Menlo Park at the company headquarters. We did meet. It looks like we was just eating, but we really were meeting too. Then the next wall of pictures are just actually miscellaneous pictures. I still have about 40 or 50 boxes of pictures that I won't be able to display, but these are just friends in CF. All right, now we're going to move from Consolidated Freightways to our retirement. When we got moved and everything into the Jackson's Gap area, we started church at the Flint Hills Methodist Church in Alexander City. Then I had some buses that I had been leasing out and had them all sold but one. A lady came up to me one day and said, "I heard you had a bus." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I have one. I used to be in the leasing business and have sold everything." And she said, "Well, why don't you bring it out here and we'll go on a fall forage trip?" Well, I explained to her that I was not in the bus business and really did not qualify to drive a motor coach with passengers. So after several discussions with the lady, I decided that I would engage the man that had the bus leased to come out and do the driving and so forth. Long story short, we did a 5-day, 4-night trip into the Northwest and tagged it as a fall forage trip. After this fall forage trip, Edna and I both got the bug to go into the tour business. So we bought one new bus and started a very small scale motor coach business. We started our bus company in 1994. At the same time, a large number of other operators in the Alabama got together and we formed an association, which is now the Alabama Motor Coach Association, which is large and very well known. Jim Thrasher, of Thrasher Brothers Coach Lines, was the first president, and I was the first vice president. After I served my tenure as president and then served on the board up until the time we sold the company to Capital Trailways in 2007, when I retired, at an annual meeting, they surprised me and had a young couple come in and knight me. And they also gave me a plaque from the Alabama Motor Coach Association. This was quite a highlight as president and chairman of the board of our operation. All right, this wall, it just got miscellaneous pictures, which were taken all over the United States. We operated in every state with the exception of Hawaii, and had made 4 trips to Alaska, had been in every province of Canada. So these pictures are going to show glaciers, they're going to show the redwoods where you could drive a car through. There's pictures there of Alan Jackson's folks' home in Newnan, Georgia. Pictures of the Hearst Castle, where William Randolph Hearst had the huge castle there at San Simeon on Highway 1 in California. There'll be some copper mines out of Salt Lake City. There'll be a hunting lodge of an old war general in Wyoming. You'll see cakes where people have had birthdays on the tours, and we always celebrated their birthdays. There's a picture of 6 of our buses lined up together at the shop, and then several shots of individual buses. There's one bus on there, it's maroon and white, a converted Von Hool, and we used that as an entertainer coach, and Jim Thrasher and Charles Payne and I worked together, and they furnished the sleeper coaches for the entertainers, and I furnished the tour, the Star Bus, we called it. But it was totally outside my league, and I should have never got into something I didn't know anything about. After Harry Connick Jr. had it out for almost 7.5 months, when it came back in, I traded it back into Von Hool for 3 seat coaches. And as I learned all through my life, it's better to leave things alone you don't know nothing about. And I sure didn't know nothing about the entertainer business. And a little picture that's kind of unique to me is a little white house with 2 pillars. I think it's about a 4-room house, and that's where Elvis Presley was born, in Tupelo, Mississippi. Then we get over into the cemetery in Montgomery, where Hank and Audrey are buried. And then there's pictures of the dogs that race in Alaska. And we toured one of the kennels and learned a lot about that. Got pictures of the gardens in Victoria, British Columbia, out on the island, which is absolutely breathtaking. And the one bus that's by itself, it was a 57 passenger, and we cut it down to a 50 passenger and made it good for tours where people were out for a long time. This picture, my mother was getting older, and I took the back seats out of this coach, and the shop built me some bunk beds. I picked up all of my family out of Georgia and Alabama, and then we went into Kansas City and picked up the daughter's family, and then proceeded out to California to meet with my brother's family. We spent a week out there touring the San Francisco area, and it was the last time that my brother's family and my family had the opportunity to get together. So this trip is really, really sentimental to both families. If we were traveling on a tour and there wasn't anything particular to see, like in western Kansas or maybe out in Wyoming, Montana, out in the hill country, well, we had different entertainers' recordings that we played for the people, and this Carl Hurley was absolutely one of the best. You could show those to your grandchildren, your grandmother. He was extremely funny, but no risque whatsoever. Did I tell you about the one I pulled on my brother that he did?
I'm not sure. I think last time we were here, you
Chicken?
said something. Yeah, I don't know. Remind me.
Huh?
Remind me about it again. Tell me about it.
I told him that his kids were coming, so I told Edna, said, "You're gonna come shopping with me." And I said, we were down getting snacks and wine and beer. And I said, Edna came by the meat. And she said, I think I'm gonna get some of these fryers to cook on the grill. And she kept picking one up and laying it down, picking another one up and laying it down. About that time, this young butcher come out behind the deal. She said, excuse me, young man, do these get any bigger? And he said, no, ma'am, they're dead.
Oh my God. I love it. That's too funny. What'd you think of that?
Well, Jack thought it was real, and he was going to send it into Reader's Digest. I said, don't you dare.
Yeah.
That's Carl Hurley's
Okay.
joke.
God almighty. That's too funny.
We did a lot of tours in D.C. Of course, every place we went, we would have a step-on guide. And man, you can learn a lot from a step-on guide. All right, these miniature toy buses are the manufacturer's little replicas that they give to the operators. We were primarily a Von Hool operator, and we operated one Setra, and that's the one that we had cut down for from a 57 Passion to a 50. Eloise Ellis was one of our travelers with the bank group, her and her husband. And as a gift to me, she crocheted this Southern Tours, and then I have several pictures of her and the group. It just means an awful lot to me that she took the time to do something like this. We really enjoyed Eloise, and unfortunately, her and her husband both have now passed. This picture's of the board of directors and I, where we were at a signing with the governor on a bill that we lobbied through the Alabama legislation to do away with the ad valorem tax on new buses. Frank Montgomery, myself, Standing, Governor Riley, and then Jim Thrasher and Charles Payne. Frank Montgomery is the president and chairman of the board of Capital Trailways, and that's who purchased us in 2007. Unfortunately, Frank got killed in an automobile accident just a few months later. A great loss to the industry. Now, after selling the company, the tour business, in 2007, well, there just wasn't any way that I was going to totally retire. And then I don't think Edna would allow me in the house every day anyway. So we decided to buy a farm. And Edna was raised on a farm, I was raised on a farm. So we decided this would kind of be a recreation thing, and it was definitely a relaxation for me, because I used to tell people, I can go over there and talk to those cows and they don't talk back, and they don't tell me their husband didn't kiss them goodbye this morning before they come to work. So it was really, really relaxing. Now the pictures across the top are when we purchased it, and it was all clear cut. I never saw such a mess in my life, because being from Oklahoma, we didn't have the trees and everything as in Alabama. It took almost a year and a half to clear all the stumps and everything off. And during that time, I purchased a backhoe, a dump truck, and a bulldozer. And as I say, we worked about 18 months, and then we started fencing it. After we got it fenced, then we started out with one little tiny container with a cover over it, and that was our first barn. And then we built the big barn and the silos. Now the bull you see there, his name was Charlie, and he sired 134 calves during his tender. And then at the towards the bottom, you see a jackass, and we had him for kind of protecting the calves. This is my granddaughter. She was about 15 then, 14 or 15, and we bought her a horse. She took riding lessons and would come out and visit and enjoy her horse. She's now all grown up, 21 years old, and every time a boy looks at her, I think her dad gets more gray hairs in his head. Mallory's horse has got her head in the pickup in Edna's lap. Eric had two horses and Mallory had the one Palomino. And then as we go along, we bought a Jeep and we used it some at the farm, but mostly we used a Kawasaki mule. And then you're gonna see pictures where we've got grass out, and the highest number of cattle with calves that we had over at one time was 66. The kids are all around a fire bin. Every year to try to give back to the community, we would take 2 wagons and have a Winnie roast and a hayride. I don't know who had the most fun, me or the kids. I know I had a ball. That cat, she was kind of the ruler of the big barn, and we didn't have any mice. That tractor in the middle is a totally computerized tractor that belongs to a dear friend of mine's son in Kansas. Bert Stute that we had showed earlier was a safety supervisor and a road driver. Well, his son Kent farms out of Glasgow, Kansas. Also, after retiring from CF and starting the bus business in 1994, well, we weren't going to have any kind of a business that we couldn't service our equipment. So we put in a 2-bay shop with an office and opened up a full service shop. Well, as that went on, we wound up with 2 service trucks and 2 50-ton wreckers. The red wrecker, we run it nationwide. Of course, the farthest we ever went to the west was Denver, and then we went all the way up the east coast to Maine. Some of the pictures along the bottom are actual wrecks that we did. The one, he had been pulling a house trailer and got sideswiped and wound up, we had to literally pick him up front and back and take him out of these people's driveway. There's no way we could have gotten it out. And then one of Henderson and Coker's dozers went in the lake, and he went out 200 and some odd feet and went underwater. We had to get a diver out there to find it. That's the diver out, and that's a flag where he flagged it, where we'd see where it was at. Then we brought a pontoon boat out and rolled our cables up and took the cables out, had the diver hook onto it. At that time, we hooked the white wrecker on, and it was tied down to a front end loader and 2 dozers and pulled it out of the lake. The picture with the bus and the trailer, Josh Brewer, who has the sign company there east of Dadeville, he also had a band called the Lugnuts. That unit broke down. It was a a 40-foot bus with a 28-foot trailer, and our wrecker was about 38 foot long. Ray and I went to Memphis and hooked onto it and brought the entire unit back, hooked together, down through Birmingham and off to Jackson's Gap. Another stage of my life that is dear to me was the support of the Shriners. This certificate was awarded for my 50 years accomplishment in the Shrine in 2017. Shriners are often seen wearing a red fez, and the headgear became official for Shriners in 1872. Now this particular fez is an Arab fez representing the temple in Kansas City, where I walked the hot sands 50 years ago. And then the Yarb fez represents the temple in Atlanta, where I demitted to and am now a member there. I want to thank you for watching this documentary. And at the same time, I wish to dedicate it to my wife, Edna. Without your support, Edna, this documentary would never have happened. Thanks, and I love you.